All right, this is the digestive system video. So once again, I'm going to have a lot of diagrams. I'm not going to write out notes, but I want you to write down notes for yourself, the things that you feel like, hey, I didn't know that already. I want to add that to my notes. So first off, I just have a really large diagram. I'm just going to go through it piece by piece, make sure that you remember each of these things. So obviously your mouth, that is going to be involved in mechanical digestion. Mechanical is not chemical, it's simply the breakdown of food into smaller pieces. Pieces being smaller increases surface area, therefore the enzymes will have more area to attack and break down the food. These are salivary glands. The salivary glands are going to add saliva to your food, not just to moisten it so that it's easier to swallow, but it also adds amylase. Amylase begins the digestion of starch, so starch digestion actually starts right in your mouth. If you take a cracker and put it into your mouth and just let the saliva work, all of a sudden you'll start tasting a sweetness. And that's proof that the carbohydrates in the cracker have broken down into more basic sugars. All right, when you swallow, you're actually swallowing what's called a bolus. A bolus is a mass of food that has been moistened, and that one unit of food moves down through your esophagus by muscular contractions. It doesn't just drop, muscles push the food along. That movement is called peristalsis. All right, as it moves down, the first place the food enters, the first organ that it enters is your stomach. Your stomach tends to be very acidic. It works based off, I'm going to be talking about some hormones, not in this video, but the next video, about the hormones that affect digestion. So there are hormones that actually make you feel hungry, and there are hormones that actually start your body to produce more gastric juices. Gastric juices is a general word for the enzymes and the acids that work in your stomach. Your stomach tends to have a low pH, usually around 2, and that's best for protein digestion. So the stomach is the main site for protein digestion in your body. You have two sphincters. Sphincters are circular muscles connected to your stomach. The first one is the cardiac sphincter, which would be right here at the opening of the stomach, allowing food to enter into the stomach cavity. And then this one is called the pyloric sphincter. The pyloric sphincter only lets little bit of stomach fluids, which is now called chyme, C-H-Y-M-E. Chyme is the mixture of the partially digested proteins, any of the rest of the food that you ate, mixed with those gastric juices. Chyme will be released a little bit at a time into the small intestine. It's not released all at once because it actually helps you to not be hungry all day long if your body releases food a little bit at a time into your small intestine. Right here at this junction, a lot of things are going on. The beginning of the small intestine is called the duodenum. There are 3 sections to your small intestine: duodenum, jejunum, ileum. I actually tell people to remember it like this: darn jiggly intestines. So you always go, oh, those are the intestines because they're all jiggly and all those lines. DJI is the order of the 3 sections of the small intestine. So the first section of the small intestine is where chyme enters from the stomach, and 2 more entry places are here. The liver is right here, and the liver produces bile. The liver actually has many functions in your body. It helps detoxify alcohols. It helps with removing some waste from your body. It produces urea, which is taking some nitrogen from proteins and adding it to carbon dioxide. That's how urea is formed. That happens in your liver. But one of the jobs that's going to be involved in digestion is that it produces bile. Bile is not an enzyme, but instead it's an emulsifier. To emulsify means to break things into smaller droplets and not allow them to congeal back into one drop. So bile, it helps you emulsify fats. When you eat fats, there are actually hormones that stimulate your gallbladder to release bile into the duodenum. So if you are eating all day long and you've eaten really healthy and there really haven't been fats in your body, your small intestine will not contain a lot of bile. As soon as you eat something fatty, your gallbladder will be triggered to release bile into your small intestine, and that helps emulsify the fats. Think about salad dressing and water. When they're together, they don't mix well. Add a little bile and it makes the droplets smaller, and it makes them separate and mix in with the water. That will allow more surface area for the lipases, enzymes that break down lipids, to work. Then we have the pancreas. Over here, sitting under your stomach, is the pancreas. The pancreas makes a lot of hormones and a lot of enzymes. I know you know the hormone insulin. Insulin is made by the pancreas, and it helps control your blood sugar levels. Pancreas also makes some digestive enzymes, lipases, nucleases. They are going to go from the pancreas into the duodenum. So the duodenum, that section of the small intestine, receives fluids from many places, and its number one job is going to be chemical digestion. The pancreas also adds a buffer that helps increase the pH of the chyme. Coming from the stomach, it was very acidic. The small intestine actually works best at a pH between 7 and 8. So it needs to greatly increase the pH by adding a basic substance to the duodenum. Now, as you go further within the intestine, you get into the jejunum and the ileum, and the job changes a little bit. As chemicals get digested, absorption is going to increase. So there will be a shift, chemical digestion, and the absorption. And then ileum, it's really going to be about absorption. And absorption is all about villi. So the inside of your small intestine, if you could look into the channel, it looks like carpet. And it has, here's the food going through. These little bumps are called villi. And every villi has capillaries wrapped around it. And that is where the diffusion of nutrients occurs. So if you think about it, there could have started with starch. Starch will get broken into glucose, and glucose is small enough, because it's a monosaccharide, to pass out the villi and into a capillary and now go to all the cells of your body. Your goal of eating is to get the nutrients to all of your cells. If food makes it all the way to the ileum and it has not been digested, like corn, there's a lot of cellulose in corn, we do not have the enzymes to break down cellulose, so then it forms feces. So the end of the small intestine is the beginning of your colon or your large intestine. So you'll hear, especially adults, talk about colon, because colon cancer is definitely an issue. Your colon is a much shorter tube and it's much thicker. This is the ascending, transverse, and descending colon. Your large intestine is made up of this tube that's colored in red. It really has one very specific job, and that is to control water. You do not want to release water in your feces because we're a terrestrial animal, meaning we live on land. We do not want to dehydrate. We drink water all day to make sure we keep our water level up. And if you excreted a lot of water, you would be getting rid of that nutrient that you need in all of your cells. So the job of the large intestine is to increase the reabsorption of water. So there are capillaries around it that will absorb as much water as possible. If your body absorbs too much, that's what causes constipation. If your body does not absorb enough, that's what causes diarrhea. So there has to be just that perfect osmotic balance. Another thing that happens in your large intestine is that is where E. coli and other bacteria live. And they actually are able to break down some of the cellulose that you couldn't. And they actually are helpful. It's a symbiotic relationship that we have with them. They help increase the absorption of vitamin K. That's a nutrient that you need, and vitamin D. So that's another thing that happens in your large intestine. Your spleen is not really part of your digestive system, but they show it in the picture because it is located right there. It does help with the filtering of blood. All right, so I think I've mentioned everything on here. Oh, the last section is called the last section of the descending is the rectum, and then the anus is how it exits the body, and that is another sphincter, another circular muscle. All right, in this one, this just really, I think I'll load this so you can have it, but it goes through each of the jobs that each part of your digestive system did. So I will load this picture. No, I won't load it. I'm going to photocopy this picture for you so you can cut it out and add it to your notes. All right, enzymes. I want to talk about enzymes. I will also give you this chart. It gives you the enzyme, where it's made, the optimum pH, what it starts with, what it ends with, and where it works. So, salivary amylase comes from your salivary glands, works best at a pH of 7, which is what your mouth is. It starts with starch and it breaks it down into maltose. That happens in your mouth. Pepsin is a protease, which means it's going to break down proteins. It is released from gastric glands. Those are glands in your stomach. pH is 2, and as I mentioned this pH of 2, I also wanted to mention another disorder. I try and mention as many as I can. Ulcers are a disorder of your stomach when the lining of your stomach actually starts being worn away by the acids in your stomach. They say stress, high salt levels, both of those things could cause it to get worn down. You have this wonderful mucus layer on the inside of your stomach that prevents the cells of the stomach from being digested. If there are holes in your stomach lining, that is what an ulcer is. Sometimes it causes bleeding because those cells then bleed out and then it could cause bleeding. All right, so proteins get digested in your stomach. When you break down a protein, you end up with single peptides. Eventually, you want to end up with amino acids, and this, of course, was happening in the stomach. Pancreatic amylase, so both of our amylases digest starch. Pancreatic means it's made from the pancreas, salivary, made from salivary glands. You'll notice all of these ones coming up now have a pH of 8. That's their optimum pH. That environment is going to be in the small intestine. So amylase breaks starch into maltose, happens in your duodenum. Trypsin is a protease, breaking down protein into peptides in your duodenum. And then lipase from the pancreas, breaking down fats into fatty acids and glycerol, again happening in that first section, the duodenum of the small intestine. Nucleases, again from the pancreas, breaking down nucleic acids into nucleotides again. So if you remember back to biochemistry, carbs, proteins, fats, nucleic acids, each one of them are going to be in the food that you eat, and each one needs to be digested. All of them have enzymes made from the pancreas. All of them work at an optimal pH of 8. All of them take the large molecule and break it into a simple molecule that will be able to be transferred into the capillary, and all of it happens in the duodenum. All right, next. I wanted to show this. I know I already talked about it, but when we dissect the cats, these are things that you want to look for. So here's the pancreas, and it has a pancreatic duct. A duct is always a small vessel that carries a substance from one organ to another. So this duct brings fluid, which is going to contain those lipases, nucleases, amylases, and proteases that the pancreas makes and put it into the duodenum. And then here was the liver, makes bile, stores it in the gallbladder, releases it as needed into your duodenum. The common bile duct is what's carried